Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about perimenopause. Join us as we share the symptoms, some helpful tips, our own experiences, and lots of humor around this stage of life. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're talking about perimenopause. As expected, we've had several requests for this topic, given the typical age of our listeners. And most of us are dealing with it, and those that aren't are either anticipating it with fear, or having already been through it, are maybe breathing a sigh of relief. So I definitely feel like this is one of the things that people ask us to talk about. And the longer we've done Midlife Matters, which I think we might be coming up on 6 years, the more applicable I feel like it feels to us. How about you guys?
Yeah, because 6 years ago, I was probably in perimenopause. Now I'm in full blown. Well, I don't know if I am or not, since I had a hysterectomy and I take medication. So maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I think you would be just based on your age. Like it'd be pretty rare probably for you not to have already gone into menopause.
No. But I mean, can you really say you're in menopause if you're taking medication? Because you're not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As far as feeling the effects.
Okay. Yeah.
I was going to say it's a great way to start the episode in confusion, because I think that's like all of it. We're confused. Are we in it? Are we out of it? How much longer do we have? When can it start? Oh, pretty much. Like as soon as you're out of puberty, you can start perimenopause. I feel
right. Right.
What are my hormones doing? Something different all the time. So if we're a little confused, we're going to try to talk about that because that's part of it.
And I love that they call it reverse puberty.
Yes.
So I was trying to find just a 2-sentence summary of what perimenopause is, and it's almost impossible. Everywhere I went, it would goes on for paragraphs. But basically, it's perimenopause is when your body starts transitioning to menopause. So you're having a period, and now your body is going to transition to not having a period. And so during this transition, your ovaries begin producing less hormones. It causes your menstrual cycle to become erratic or irregular, and you are moving toward the end of your reproductive years. It is natural and normal, it says, but it comes with physical and emotional symptoms that can be very disruptive or uncomfortable. And I think that is what people don't like about it, is the physical and emotional symptoms. And we're going to talk about those today. It does say that perimenopause can begin as early as your mid-30s or as late as your mid-50s. But the average age of menopause is 51. So chances are you are experiencing it in the 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years leading up to that, maybe 5 to 10 years after that. Basically, it's perimenopause until you've gone 12 months without a period.
Right.
And then you are in menopause.
And the bad thing is you can go 11 months and then have one and you start all over. You start the clock all over.
Yes. So basically, I never knew until this became applicable to me that it was the decreasing estrogen that is causing a lot of this havoc. And so there really isn't much we can do about it. We are going to talk a little bit about hormone replacement therapy and maybe how that can help. But every woman is going to go through this. There's no way to avoid it.
Right.
So it's coming for you.
Eventually.
One of the things that we wanted to talk about today, one of the reasons that we decided to do this topic was because of an Instagram reel that Julie sent, because there's nothing that we like better than talking about a topic if we can surround it with some humor. So Julie, why don't you describe the video that you sent us?
Okay, it's a video from the woman from the Holderness Family. Are you guys familiar with that couple?
Yeah.
They make a lot of parodies, and sing songs and stuff. And this lady, she's in her car and she says, these are things not to ask a woman in perimenopause. And she goes through and lists 5 or 6 things, and they're just hysterical. I mean, and then the comments. Did you notice there were 6,200 comments? So that tells you a lot right there. And I feel like I read almost all of them, and a lot of them were the same, but that just shows you how many women relate to this topic. Like some of the comments were, this comment section is giving me all the feels. I've found my tribe. There were a lot like that. They felt very validated that, that they weren't alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Two things that stuck out to me from the video was one that she called how she's feeling is just very stabby. And I think that's a great word because sure, there are physical symptoms, but there's also emotional symptoms. And one of the things is that you just feel edgy and stabby during this time period. And then I also loved it when she said that she needs something just short of a horse tranquilizer to get a good night's sleep. And I feel that way too. So I could relate to those two things.
And what's so funny is her when she said that, it was when someone said, "Have you tried green tea?"
Yeah.
Like green tea, horse tranquilizer. They're not even in the same.
Yes. Well, this is just a common conversation. I mean, we all love our sleep, and sleep kind of like helps us live our lives. But I mean, that is a topic, and not everything works for everyone. And so I think that was part of the video that I really enjoyed, is that other women that are probably saying, "Have you tried?" Maybe that works for them. You know what I mean? Like maybe they have found something that works for them, but it's not working for her. And she's like, I appreciate it, but also, yes, I have tried everything.
Yeah, she's like, if it's out there, I've tried it.
Yes. I mean, I typed into my Instagram search engine, perimenopause or menopause. And you'll see a plethora of, this is how I eat. This is how I work out. These are the foods that I eat. And everyone's an expert. But the thing is everyone's body is different. So yet here we are again. This is very individualistic. And so the have you tried, we're going to talk about that. Because even amongst the three of us, like none of us are the same.
Right.
Well, let's take a few minutes and kind of jump off the comments on what we thought was funny about this video. So what were some of the comments that stuck out to you, Julie?
Well, my very favorite was the first one. It says, "Have you tried eating more protein?" And she said, "Are you kidding? It's my part-time job right now eating protein." She goes, "I can't even have a hobby because all I do is eat protein." And I kind of feel like that's where I am because I've just recently started trying to ramp up my protein, and it feels like a full-time job. Like I'm always thinking about what's for breakfast. How can I cook breakfast last night so I'll have it tomorrow? What's for dinner? What's for lunch? Like, is how much protein is this? Like, it's just preoccupying my mind, So I thought that was funny. Can't even have a hobby because that's what my hobby is right now.
I enjoyed one of the comments, said they need to make an Inside Out for perimenopause. Reverse puberty is so much fun. And it's funny because we've just watched Inside Out 2, and it's the Disney movie where they give your emotions a character and they talk about that from whatever emotion it is. And so that cracked me up just thinking about like the different voices that people would hear, if they could hear us talking through reverse puberty.
I bet that movie comes. I really do.
It's going to have to be rated PG-13 because there's some very personal things that you end up going through.
There were several comments that talked about that it's not just perimenopause, but it's the crazy trifecta of 1, perimenopause, 2, raising teens, and 3, helping aging parents all at the same time. And I can remember a friend who was a little bit older than me when she had her kids. And so our oldest were teenagers at the same time, but she was probably 10 years ahead of me. And she was saying how hard it was to be in the house with her daughter going through puberty and herself going through perimenopause. And I wasn't in that situation. But then when I got to perimenopause, her comments came back to me as, wow, I can see why that was really true for her, because you have all of the stabby emotional feelings that you're going through. And actually, teenagers feel pretty stabby and emotional too. And so you could see why you would have a lot of butting heads and a lot of emotional upheaval in the house at the same time.
Yeah, surrounding that comment, I saw someone say, "I feel like I live in hormone house." And she said, "I say, welcome to hormone house." And somebody said, "That needs to be cross-stitched."
Yes. Yes. You're having a flood of hormones. Hormones are leaving you. Like nobody's okay.
Surging.
Right.
Yeah.
Another funny comment was, it's really not that hot in here. Yes, it is. You can put on a sweater. I can't be naked in public.
Or when people argue, like the husband would say, it's really not that hot. And you're like, no, it is. Like, just accept it. It is.
Some of the comments where it was men related, those cracked me up too. So I made sure to mention those. So one guy said, as a man, I should probably pretty much never say anything. That's all I got. and then this woman actually said, my husband asked what other women do to get rid of their pooch. I'm quietly plotting his demise.
Some of the men comments were really funny. Like a magnet my husband put on the fridge. Menopause is hell, and it's been hard on my wife too.
I loved when I don't know what her first name is, the Holderness woman.
Oh, Kim.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, when she said, no, I'm not angry, she goes, I'm really just disappointed with everything all the time.
Yes.
I thought this was an interesting thing, and maybe you guys have heard about this, but in a comment, someone was saying all the substitutions they made, and one of the substitutions was, I substitute things like coffee to mushrooms coffee. Is mushrooms coffee a thing?
Oh, yeah.
They're making coffee from mushrooms?
Well, coffee, in air quotes. It's brown, it's hot, but it's, it's a mushroom.
Have you ever tried it?
No.
I can't imagine.
Haven't tried it. I've heard people talk about it. I have a good friend that talked about starting on mushrooms. She said for the brain fog.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so she really is very healthy in her approach to life and tries to find these natural, substitutes for the different things that she's going through. She's just ahead in the game than me. And so she has brought up the mushrooms. And so she jokes about her mushrooms. So I need to ask her if she's still doing that. But yeah, it's a thing.
Oh, okay. I never, ever heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, because there's always a lot of comments about diet. And somebody said, one of the things not to say is just cut out sugar. And one lady's response was, sis, sugar is all that's keeping me from doing jail time.
I saw that. And then there were 21 replies to that comment.
Yes.
There is, when you Google, that's what they'll say, know, just cut out sugar, increase your protein.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Someone said, when I was in perimenopause, my husband handed me several sheets of stapled paper that contained information about andropause. He was eager to share that men go through something just like women do. He even highlighted some of the more salient symptoms. I took the pages, held them up to his face, and tore them into 1,000 tiny pieces. And there was no more talk of andropause after that.
Oh my goodness.
She was feeling stabby.
Feeling stabby. And did you notice, there were a couple of comments about women that had men gynecologists?
Oh, yeah.
And some of the comments that came from men. So let's see. One of them was, just get used to it. It's that time of your life.
Yeah.
And what my favorite comment from that was, you're fired.
Yeah. Most of them would say, my fired gynecologist.
Fired gynecologist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do think that that's one of the things that kind of comes out strong in the comments is basically if you are not experiencing it, your advice is probably not really going to be relevant and maybe appreciated by the recipient, because someone said, my doctor told me to get exercise and eat a Mediterranean diet to lose the belly weight. I asked her if she'd hit perimenopause yet. No, she hasn't. Awesome. Let me know when you do. So see, she already had a woman doctor.
Yeah.
It didn't even matter that she was a woman doctor, because if she hasn't hit it, it's very easy to say. Another one put in, it really is just as simple as calories in, calories out. But I know women who really have been fit and have had the calories in, calories out, mindset their whole life. And still, when they hit perimenopause, they gain weight and their body changes.
This is the phase of life where you just gain weight from swallowing spit.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah. All those comments about, have you tried the gym and all this, men probably need to just be quiet.
even amongst women, this is a popular conversation to come up, especially in exercise class. Like we are all there doing our best to try to, stay in shape, work out the crazy, deal with changing hormones, fluctuating hormones. And there's women in there that range in age, like they're like 25 to like 70. And I'm not kidding. Like there is a huge age range in there. And so there is constantly conversations about, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, what symptoms do you have? What symptoms do you have? And so something new comes up every time. So sleep obviously is a popular topic. And so that's something that like I haven't dealt with yet. It hasn't affected my sleep yet, but obviously if it did, I would be highly concerned. That'd be like priority is how can I get sleep? I will do anything to get a good night's sleep, but like restless leg, talking about the magnesium, like we're all there trying to help each other. And so, and while you guys know, I've talked about intermittent fasting, that's something that actually helps me feel better. And somebody would feel very, very upset about if I were to say, have you tried?
That made the comments, Mindy.
Like that, I know. Like, and I was like, I'm not telling anybody. No, like this is what I do, but I'm doing the best I can. So I think like, cause you're not going to have all the symptoms. You're going to have different symptoms in different ways.
Yeah. And I saw several people say, I'm so glad we can talk about this publicly. It makes people, because if you're only talking to the people some people don't want to talk about it. Some people don't have any symptoms. So you could really feel like you were the only one,
like alone.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I appreciate the parody. First of all, because these are very real things. These are things that do keep us up at night, literally.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're having trouble sleeping or something's on your mind, because I know I've noticed at different times something that's abnormal to me is that increased stabby feeling. I'm like, that's just not typically me. I'm like, where's this coming from? I have no reason to feel this way. Like, I really am concerned. I'm like, I don't feel like myself. I'm forgetting things, that concerns me. I'm like, do I have a brain tumor? I mean, like that's where your mind goes, and that could keep you up at night. You're sincerely concerned.
Or like she said, just have mashed potatoes for brains.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, this might get me shot, but I kind of think, like, is menopause blamed for more than it should be blamed for?
Good question.
Like it is a time of life where you're launching children or you have adult children and you're concerned about them and you have no control. You have less input. It's almost easier to have a toddler where you can direct everything, and you have aging parents and you're thinking about your own health, like you're just more prone to diseases at this age, like just the natural aging process. So I just wonder if it's just that whole perfect storm, and menopause gets maybe blamed for a lot of it, whereas it's just one component.
Right.
Well, speaking of like questions, I think, and I know that a lot of generations, they always act like whatever they're going through is the first time anyone's ever experienced it. But I honestly don't know that this topic used to get this much attention. Like my whole life, I've loved to like listen in on my mom's conversations, and I just don't remember them really talking about this. I feel like people are much more open about it now. I feel like the media is more open about it. People are making parodies and things on social media about it. Like it's much more talked about. And I don't know if it was talked about before. What was your experience like with your mothers? Like, do you feel like your mothers talked about this or no?
Not really. My mom had a hysterectomy when I was 6.
Oh, okay.
So, so that I just didn't hear about it. But I did see in the comments that a lot of one young woman said, an older woman said, I think young women are more familiar with the term, like in their 20s and 30s, like they're already thinking about it. And this woman said, I think I was taught more in school and in life about Henry VIII's wives than my own body. And
true.
And I thought that's really true. Like she knew more about other things than her own body and how it works. And I don't think that's as true anymore.
Right.
I think young people know what menopause is, and they didn't used to.
I agree. There's a lot more conversation about everything. I mean, we did the TMI episode, and some of this may fall into that category for some people, but I do feel that we're just a lot more open about physical things. You know, they've always been there, but we're talking about them. Everything is done in public. Everything's done on social media. You know, and so we're kind of living this out loud. So I appreciate that there's more camaraderie, like, you know, the stigma is off for the things that are actually happening and what people are actually going through. Julie, I do really appreciate your comments about, you know, are we giving it too much attention in the fact that like maybe it's getting blamed for the season in life that we're in, because a lot is happening at this season. You know, we play a lot of different roles. That role continues to change. And so, you know, while we try to live with grace and encouragement and joy, and we're looking to the Lord to help us through each day, you know, not using this as an excuse for bad behavior, but just saying like there's more going on below the surface. We can talk about that. And then how can we manage that so that we're not so stabby in public?
I guess that's what you maybe narrowed it a little more. I guess not giving it as an excuse for bad behavior. That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah. Yeah.
Because we've already mentioned everyone's going through something, you know, even the teenagers with their, you know, with their hormones, like having grace with them, having grace with yourself. And then, okay, we got to deal with this because we've got hormones.
So for whatever reason, we are fortunate enough to be living in a time where this is talked about. So that's good. And there are resources out there. What are some of the most common conversations you've had with friends about this topic?
I feel like the one that comes up the most among my friends is sleep. Sleep disruption and just what a nightmare that is. And I don't have that. So it's really, I just keep my mouth shut. You know, I don't say, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Because I know one friend in particular has literally tried everything. She's always, you know, trying something new. And I don't know. It's just such a mystery as to why that can't be fixed.
Right.
Yeah, I would say that sleep was my first symptom. Sleeplessness was my first symptom. I mean, I can remember over 10 years ago, desperately posting on Facebook, you know, does anyone have any tricks for sleeping? I didn't connect it necessarily to perimenopause, but I would watch boring documentaries of like fish in desperate attempts to like make myself get sleepy in the middle of the night. Like it was just very difficult. And now since then, I mean, I have terrible sleep. Like I can be interrupted at anything. I have no problem falling asleep. But if it is after 2 a.m. and I wake up, it's a crapshoot as to whether or not I'll be going back to sleep.
Yes. I think one symptom that is attributed probably to growing older, but also to hormones decreasing is joint pain. And so that's something that, of course, with working out with a lot of other women, we're constantly talking about, well, I never had this pain before, or, you know, I've had to increase the amount of time I spend warming up. I can't just jump into exercise like I used to, or now I'm really needing to add in more stretching at the end because, you know, I'm having more hip pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, elbow, wrist, ankles, you know, like, so we're talking about stretching. We're talking about being careful with our bodies, maybe adjusting how we exercise or adding in just more gentle work with breathing and things like that. And so shoes, inserts in your shoes. And so just trying to combat joint pain because our joints really do take a hit when our hormones start to decrease.
Yeah.
Conversations that people have, like you might have them, but they're not just discussed out to dinner, was when people started saying like, why am I just like having flooding periods? Like I had a friend who was on an airplane and she wore white pants. She was going away for a weekend with her husband. No indications that she was going to get her period. Went to the airline bathroom. She has nothing with her. And it was like a flood. She's wrapping her sweater around her. She has to go back up and like ask her husband for ideas on what they can do. Like, but it would just come out of nowhere, like just floods. And I know that Julie, that was like one of the reasons she got a hysterectomy, because she could not live with it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I quit wearing white for the 5 years previous to my surgery, and just the unpredictability and the heaviness, you couldn't sit for very long without having to get up and deal with it. So yeah, and travel was one of the things I knew, like, I want to do this, and I cannot sit on a plane for 9 hours in that situation. So that kind of prompted me, because I kind of held off. My doctor said, you can just wait, you can watch this, we don't have to do anything right now. And then he said, but I have a feeling in a couple of years you'll be back. And I was, I tried everything else, and then I was ready.
Yes.
And haven't regretted it at all.
Oh my goodness. Well,
that was one of the reasons that I ended up having a procedure, was because I had such a humiliating public instance that I was like, I have to do something about this. Like, I don't care. There's no more waiting. Even if it's going to get better, I can't risk it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, I think, how a lot of people feel, but it's not really talked about.
Yeah. Follow that thread and just keep going in that category. But one of the comments that I had a friend reach out to me as we're leaving class, she kind of whispered, and she leaned in and she said, "What do you do with the itchiness and the dryness?" And I was like, oh, girl. Call your doctor. Like, this is a normal symptom, like, for, just the health of your girl parts. And there are things and creams, and I know even at my most recent appointment, this was something, thankfully, the doctor asked me about, and so there is help for that. But that is another symptom that it's embarrassing to talk about. But, if you talk about that, like, a lot of women are struggling. Dryness, itchiness, you're trying to work out, you're trying to live your life, and it can be painful. It can be very painful. So that's one of those highly uncomfortable things that are difficult to mention, but there is help. There are creams, like estrogen creams and things like that. And I'm sure there's other stuff, but that's one I know about.
I do feel like, and maybe other people have had better doctors than I've had, but I feel like I've had to research a lot of this on my own. Like, if you're just going for your yearly gynecological exam, they are in and out in about 5 minutes. And they may say, how are you doing? But they don't really have time in their schedule for you to actually bring up any symptoms, or, really talk to you at length, or even just say, like, hey, you're at this age. Here's what you can expect. Here's what resources there are. So I started looking for a lot of podcasts on perimenopause and menopause, and I found one by a urologist where I learned a lot of information, even about vaginal estrogen and hormone replacement therapy and different things that could be done that you just don't get in your yearly exam. I mean, I suppose you could make a separate appointment and just go in and talk about, I'm feeling stabby and like these things, but most people don't make appointments for that because there's not really like a pinpointable problem that you're going to talk about. So you might not know that, hey, that in and of itself is something that we could work on. But a lot of people won't make an appointment for that. They think, well, I went for my yearly exam. They didn't say anything, so there must not be anything.
Hey, well, then I want to give a shout out to my doctor then, because when I go for my annual exam, he does the exam and we're chatting, about anything I might have a question about. But then he says, get dressed, and you go into his office. So you meet him afterwards, and he's like, okay, what do we need to talk about? I really appreciate that, because you feel like you're in you're more comfortable, you're fully dressed, you're sitting there,
Yes.
and you feel like you have his attention, full attention.
Oh,
that has never
that's
once
great.
happened to me, Julie.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've had several different gynecologists over the years, and no one has ever done that. Some are more willing to talk to you than others, but certainly they never leave the room and then see you again. Like, you'd have to talk to them with your gown on and have your list of questions ready to go rapid fire.
Yeah.
I will say this podcast has helped me prepare. Being the youngest of the three of us, this was not anything I thought about almost 6 years ago when we did start. turned 40, you know, when we were, I feel like that was so young. It was so long ago. I just don't even recognize myself now. But no, because when we interviewed John, first of all, about in October, and we talked about breast health and we talked about women's health and things like that. And then we did, Julie, you talked about your experience. We did another podcast. I feel like we've done multiple episodes. And then most recently we interviewed Dr. Baker. And so she talked about and really enlightened me. And that I feel like all along the path, you guys have prepared me. You have gone before and prepared. And honestly, it has helped, because then when I have had certain things pop up that I'm like, oh, I'm not used to dealing with this, I'm more aware that, oh, this is my body changing. And so then I kind of have more grace for myself. Like I offer myself a little bit more grace, both in exercise and sleeping and eating, and even just my pooch, or the way my body's responding to my cycle changing. So you guys have really helped me come along. And I hope that this is helpful to talk about all the different stages that we have, because we've talked about this before in different varieties.
Yeah. Anytime you know something that's coming, that's just helpful in and of itself, just to know and not be taken aback by the shock of it.
Right. Well, let's talk about how we've personally tried to handle symptoms, because I think that's probably what listeners are most interested in. And we are by no means doctors. This is just how we're personally handling it. And we're not even saying, have you tried? We're just saying what we've done for ourselves. So, Mindy, you were saying that you have been using some vaginal creams then?
I haven't used them yet, but I feel like that's going to be coming. We talked about it at my appointment because I'm just noticing some changes. And so she mentioned that. She said, when you're ready, I'm here. I'll call it in. So there's that. And I will say, one of the symptoms that I noticed was, I mentioned just a lot more, like I had rage. Like building inside of me one day, and it made no sense. And I knew it made no sense. Like my mind knew, but my body was feeling it very much so. And I thought, this does not deserve these kind of feelings.
Right. Like this feeling is too much for this situation.
This doesn't match the situation.
Right.
And so I actually took myself out of the house and went for a walk because I didn't feel like I could trust my mouth. I mean, I literally was like, thankfully this doesn't happen all the time, but it was like a light bulb, like thankfully I was aware and could think through it, because when you feel rage, it doesn't make sense. So to not lean into that. But another thing that I noticed was just my cycles getting more painful cramping, it happening more often, bloating, things like that. And so, what I do, and that's where I will say intermittent fasting will help me with that. It doesn't take away all of my symptoms or anything like that. It's not like this magic thing, but it does actually help me handle that bloating, the cramping. And I've noticed that has gotten better. And so I've been reading a book called Fast Like a Girl by Dr. Mindy Pelz, and she talks about women in different stages with their hormones and how even if you're intermittent fasting, how you should adjust it with your hormone fluctuations throughout the entire month. And so that has been a resource I've gone to personally because I have found that has helped.
I have kind of started researching changing my diet, lifestyle, and intermittent fasting is one of those things I was intrigued by, and I just never really understood it. And, once you start to understand the reasoning behind it, like I love that this one author, he talks about how our bodies are diurnal, like we're made for night and day. And that, 100 years ago, when it got dark, you went to sleep and you quit eating. It's that simple. Like that's what our body is how it's designed. And then in the daytime, you're active and you eat. And so that's kind of where that eating window comes from. And I believe that might be a key to a lot of things, like, healthier eating, and it might help sleep too. Like it's kind of a root approach to lots of symptoms. So, And then for me, eating more protein, of course, is what I'm trying to do, just because I don't want to be frail. They said that we're not just over fat, we're under under muscled as we get older. And it just stabilizes your blood sugar, less cravings. And I do feel better. Like I notice that I feel satisfied when I eat a meal. It's so much better than my toast was,
I'm glad to hear you say that, Julie.
Yeah. So it's, for me, okay, I'm 58 and here I am. I feel like I still eat like a teenager, or I have been, and it's like, okay, it's the realization of I can't do this anymore and it'd be good for me because I'm starting to reap the effects. But for me, though, I will say hormone therapy is for me because my doctor explained it as you've had estrogen in your body since you were about 13, and it's kind of what makes you, and going through menopause at 50, like a sudden menopause, with the surgery. So I woke up with a patch, and then I converted to an oral medication. It's just estradiol, take it every day, and I feel a little disingenuous in that I'm laughing at all these symptoms, which I don't really have, I haven't.
It's okay, Julie.
I haven't experienced. And I know hormone therapy is not for everybody. Like if you have a blood clotting issue or a breast cancer history, then you can't do that. But if you don't have any reasons to not to, it might be worth a try.
Yeah. I remember probably one of my must do something about the symptoms was just my flooding periods. I had a period that went on like 45 days. It was ridiculous. I mean, who can live like that? So I looked into hysterectomy. I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I had a uterine fibroid embolization. So that's where they basically block blood flow to the tumors. And so you can Google that if you're kind of on the fence. I only had one fibroid, and I felt like if I could just get the blood blocked to that one, then, I could always look at hysterectomy later, but I didn't want to do it right away. So I did do something about that. I only had about a year before I started with like 60 days between my periods and like longer time periods. And I knew I was like getting really close to like that 12-month period. And so I was listening to this podcast where they said and I also started with terrible hot flashes, like multiple times a day. You're just sitting doing a normal thing and all of a sudden you start burning up. I started getting joint pain after playing pickleball, but it wasn't like I should be able to play pickleball without my hip hurting. You know what I'm saying? Like I just started getting joint pain in a lot of different areas. And that can be one of the symptoms. And so the podcast by the urologist, she said, you don't have to wait until you've been 12 months without a period to start hormone replacement therapy. So I made an appointment with somebody in Franklin who takes like an hour, and she really goes over all your options. And basically, at that point, I started like a low dose estrogen patch and then progesterone once a day because I do still have my uterus. And so you have to have that. And that has been really good. Like my hot flashes went away almost instantaneously, and the joint pain lessened. And I have felt weird about being on hormone replacement therapy because in 2002, they scared women so bad with this study saying basically that you have such increased risk of breast cancer if you're on hormone replacement therapy. And up until that time, a lot of women took HRT. And then that study came out, and then women just decided they would just white knuckle their way through it. And now they've come out and they've debunked a lot of the way that study was done and a lot of the findings. And I kind of liken it to a lot of people are on birth control a good portion of their life. They're messing with their hormones every day doing that. Like, what is the difference? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's been very normalized that we can mess with our hormones with birth control. I think HRT is again becoming more normalized. So I've been doing that for almost a year now. And I don't know how long I'll do it. My regular doctor, when I went, she asked me if I was on it, and I said I was about ready to start. She said, maybe at least, she said she was on it for about 5 years to get herself through the worst of it. But I've also talked to women who've been on it much longer than 5 years. So I don't know how long I'll do it, but I will say that because I don't have any reasons not to, that I have been taking it and it has been good for me. Also on that podcast, I learned about vaginal estrogen. And I started that. And basically that makes so much sense. You need, even if you've had breast cancer, this woman really talks about how anyone can take vaginal estrogen. You could use vaginal estrogen for a whole year and it would be the equivalent of one of the estradiol pills that Julie takes. Like, it is so low dose, but there are so many estrogen receptors in the vaginal area, and you even put it inside your body. So even along your bladder and things like that, it works its way. Like, that's so good for you for bladder health, vaginal health. Like, you just use it 2 to 3 times a week. Like, and it's about $30 a month, a prescription.
Yeah.
So it's not astronomically expensive. And it's a lifetime thing. You should take it until you're 99. Like, you plan on taking it for the rest of your life. And they said that it would really be so beneficial. Like, all these older women that get a lot of UTIs in nursing homes and things, if they were on this, their vaginal health would have stayed so much better. And even it would help avoid that. Like, there's so much research. So even if you're not willing to take HRT, I strongly urge people to look into the vaginal estrogen, because I haven't seen one negative about it.
Right.
I
know.
Yeah. And the part, like, my doctors also said, like, if you want to come off of the estrogen and then you don't like it, you could start it back up again. Like, you can do a trial and see how you feel. So that's always good, because I don't know when I'll get off of it either. But the sad part about that study that kind of scared everybody, because it's been debunked, is that it was at the expense of, like, women's cardiovascular and bone health. Like, estrogen is necessary for our cardiovascular health and bone health. And so, yeah, you have to consider that too.
Right.
Yeah.
I know my doctor recently, when she was talking about the estrogen cream, the vaginal estrogen cream, she mentioned something to me that I had no idea. Right after women have babies, that's something they're starting to prescribe for young moms to help recovery.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yes. I was like, where was this when I was having these kids? I mean, that would have been very helpful. But she was actually teaching another a doctor in medical school. And so she was educating even on younger women's vaginal health, and that estrogen cream is something they're starting to prescribe.
Okay, well, we've talked about HRT. We've talked about, the different symptoms. Is there anything else that you guys talk about in this area?
I know magnesium comes up a lot, and there's different versions of magnesium. So one thing that my friend recommended is, if you're not taking magnesium at night, like to help, with sleep, that there's magnesium that you can actually rub on your feet and on your legs to try to help. So that's something that I have heard that can possibly be helpful, is, again, just in the sleep department. Muscle recovery also is what magnesium helps. But there's so many different kinds that you'll want to research, like what form you take it and which one you take and things like that.
I think if I could get my sleep under control, it would be so good. They say that if you're on progesterone, which I am, that should help you sleep. I don't know. I don't feel like it's made a huge difference. I was having problems before sleeping, and I still continue to have problems sleeping. So and it wasn't a cure-all for me, but it could be for someone else. I don't know.
But have you put the aluminum foil on your windows yet, Marie?
There's your problem.
So streetlights. I can't get that out of my head.
For sure.
One thing I do notice, and I attribute this to grief, but it could be my age, is like memory. And the place that it shows up is every Monday morning I go and work out with my trainer, and my friend is there, and my trainer inevitably says, "How was your weekend? What did you do?" And I can't tell her. I'm always like, I don't remember. So now I have to think about it on the way there. Okay, what did I do Friday, Saturday? So I've got something to tell her.
Be prepared. Start taking notes.
It's just so weird. Or like, I'll hear something, that somebody said, and then I'll hear it again later. And I think, where did I just hear that? And I go through, like, okay, who have I just seen? Who have I talked to? Like, I go through the alphabet to find words, that I can't pull out, It's just weird. So I do relate to the mashed potato brains thought.
Oh, definitely. This is why my neighbor talks about her mushrooms. Is she's trying to help that with the mushrooms.
Yeah. Well, perimenopause, it's definitely something that you're going to be talking about, have talked about, will talk about. Listeners, we would love to hear your experiences or any questions that you have. I mean, not that we're experts on anything, but perhaps we can help each other. You can find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast, or you can email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But before we go, we want to do I'm a Fan. All right, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of a food product that I got at Trader Joe's, and in my quest for more protein, and for a protein breakfast, I saw this on Instagram. It was a reel, and this lady was showing you how to prepare this food, and she says, "I don't even think this is the way it's supposed to be eaten, but this is the way I eat it." And they're called scallion pancakes. They're really not a pancake. They're just shaped like that. They're round and flat like a tortilla, but they're scallions and mushrooms and carrots, and I think there's a little bit of flour in there to hold it all together, and you just put it in a pan. But then she cracks an egg or two on it and puts a little cheese on it and rolls it up like a burrito. And it is quite possibly the best thing I've ever eaten in my life, because I love an omelet. It's very savory with the green onions, but you don't have to do all that chopping, and it's just ready to go. And they're like 120 calories, not very high calorie, but then you get your egg, and I don't know, just a single egg is kind of boring to me. So I like to doctor it up, and then you get veggies and
sure, no, that makes
you get
sense.
more protein. It's so good. And I think David was a little skeptical one night. I didn't have dinner ready, and I said, "Try this," and he loved it.
Oh, okay.
So it's really, really good.
Oh, I'll have to look for that. Are they frozen?
Yeah,
Fresh?
They're in the freezer section over where like the rice and all the more Asian food is, and I think there's 5 or 6 in a package. They're just like, it looks like a little frozen tortilla kind of.
Sure. Okay. Well, good to know. All right, Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of good carbs. That has helped, that I've had to increase. And I actually learned it from that book that I mentioned, Fast Like a Girl by Dr. Mindy Pelz. She said, like, during your cycle, there's times your body needs more carbohydrates and you need to feed it carbohydrates. And so I easily will make baked potatoes, like baked russet potatoes, or a baked sweet potato, or I've incorporated rice. Just recently, I have never liked rice in my life. I'm just going to say this is because of perimenopause. I love rice now. And I'm literally adding a baked potato, a baked sweet potato, or rice to my meals to add that carbohydrate in, like my body needs it. And so I'll give you my recipe in air quotes for my baked sweet potato. I buy the really big ones, the organic ones. I love them. It can even be a whole meal. But basically, the oven is 400. For the really big ones, I have to bake them for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But they will leak through like the aluminum foil if you've got aluminum foil wrapped around them, which is what I do. So I put a pan with parchment paper underneath my wrapped aluminum foil sweet potato.
Sure.
And I'll bake it for 2 hours. And so simple recipe, but that can be a meal. You can add it in with other things. Butter, you can add a little, brown sugar if you want, but delicious.
In an airport recently, Steve and I were on our way home, and I was trying to find something healthy. And like Chopped or places like that, you can pick like, or I guess like Kava, you can pick like a rice bowl, a salad bowl, to have all your like chicken, beans, and all that. This place, you could pick a sweet potato bowl. And so that was really good. It was basically a huge sweet potato, and then they just added all the things that you would typically put on, like chicken, olives, beans or whatever, onto the sweet potato. I wouldn't say it was quite as tasty as if I had just had like a rice bowl, but I knew that the sweet potato was good for me. But you could, make your sweet potato kind of like the base of like a burrito bowl, kind of.
A whole meal.
Yeah. I mean, that would for sure. I was very full afterwards. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
Hey, on that note, Trader Joe's sells sweet potatoes, and then it's like I guess it's like a sweet potato puree, but they're frozen in little dollops. So you just get a bag And I looked at the ingredients. The ingredients are just sweet potatoes, not a single other thing added. So I thought that might be an easier way than trying to cook a whole sweet potato for 2 hours. Like just put 3 or 4 of those discs in a bowl, put a little butter and, maple syrup on it.
Yeah.
I like blueberries on my sweet potatoes. That's a good breakfast.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is I need a Trader Joe's. This is what I've learned.
If you don't have a Trader Joe's, then
I do not
this is not applicable to you.
I need to go to Aldi and check it out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am bringing this as my I'm a fan because we're in a perimenopause episode, and I would not have normally brought it as my I'm a fan because it might be too much information, but I really feel like everyone should have this in their cupboard. So I woke up the other night having to go to the bathroom, and then I felt immediately like I have to go to the bathroom again. And then I thought, oh no. And then I was up from 2 a.m. until I found the nearest, quickest opening urgent care at 7 a.m. And I had a terrible UTI. And like every time I went to the bathroom, the stabbing just got worse and the burning just got worse. And I couldn't think of anything else. You can't even lay there and go back to sleep. Like it's agony. And I thought, I'm going to have to go to the emergency room if they do not open up an urgent care soon. And I was trying desperately to find any 24-hour-a-day drugstore or any place open, and I couldn't around here. I would have had to travel all the way into Nashville, like downtown Nashville, like by the airport to find a 24-hour Walgreens. So I was kind of stuck. But at 6, I said to Steve, I'm sorry, there's a Walmart that opens in Cool Springs. You have got to go and get these. They're called AZO, and they are urinary pain relief, maximum strength. And basically, they're these little orange pills. They'll make you pee orange too, but they will numb your bladder and take away the pain until you can get to the doctor. And I used to kind of carry them or have them on hand in the house, but I hadn't had a UTI in like 8 years. And I think I threw out the expired package when I moved last year and never thought about it. I will not be caught without these in the house. It just allows you to function until you can get to the doctor. So anyways.
That's a good word.
Every woman of our age needs to have these AZO pills on hand, and I will link to them. All right, listeners, maybe this has been TMI. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe you're like, oh, thank you for like saying some of these things out loud. I know that I always feel better talking with friends. So thank you, Julie and Mindy, for talking about this stuff with me.
Sure. It was fun. I wish we could share the link to the video.
I'll try. I don't know if I can or not. I'll try.
Yeah. It's so funny.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Sounds great. Bye.
Bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.